You men are armed. I am not. The only defense I have is the word of God. With these words, Sister Dorothy Stang, who was working courageously with the Amazon natives in Brazil, trying to protect their rights, she was walking on a path and three men came out of the woods and confronted her. She said these words, "I'm not armed." They stood back and they shot her. Sister Dorothy had heard the words of today's gospel. Do not be afraid. She was not incapacitated by this fear. She had heard the words, "Do not be afraid, you are worth more than many sparrows." She took this to heart. And because she believed, she was not incapacitated by any kind of fear. 3 times in the gospel today, we hear, "Do not be afraid." What this really means is do not let yourself be incapacitated by fear. Naturally, we have fear at times. For instance, in 1971, I was in my office in a very poor parish, and I was with some volunteers, and all of a sudden, 3 young men came in with masks or sweaters over their face and said, "On the floor." At first, I thought they were kidding, but I soon found out they were not, and I got on the floor, we all did, and they put a gun to the back of my head. They said, "We want your gun." And I said, "I don't have a gun." The previous pastor walked around with a gun in his cassock. So after they found out I really didn't have a gun, they marched me into where the little safe I had was. I had trouble remembering the combination with the gun at your head, Finally remembered it and opened up the safe. And they got the entire Sunday collection. $25 and a few cents, plus an old watch. They were not happy with this, but that's all I had. I went back in, got back on the floor. They pulled the telephone out of the wall, and then they left. I pushed the file cabinet against the door. I yelled out the window, "Help, I've been robbed." The guy looked at me as if I was drunk and paid no attention. And after a while, I pulled back the cabinets and I got my little dog to walk out. And I love my dog, but I love my life more, to make sure the way was clear. And it was. It made the paper the next day, the largest paper in the city. I share this story because when I was there with the shotgun in the back of my head, I felt an incredible peace. I can't explain it. I thought any minute my life at 30 years old would be ended. But since then, I have come so close to death that I am not afraid of death. I know I can be sure that God is with me as God was with me at that moment. So 3 times in the gospel, Jesus says, "Do not be afraid." What that really says is do not give in. Do not let yourself be overcome and incapacitated by fear. Naturally, I felt frightened when I saw the youth come in with the guns, but I felt this peace by the grace of God. It's one thing to be frightened. It's another to give in to the fear. If we put the gospel in perspective, we realize that Jesus was preparing the disciples to be sent on a missionary journey. Something like a coach preparing the team for the next important game, saying, don't be overconfident, don't be caught off guard. Jesus knew that they would meet opposition, rejection, all kind of pushback. So he was preparing them so that they would not be overcome by crippling fear. Kierkegaard wrote, when the frost of fear turns over our limbs, we become immobilized. How Jesus encountered the disciples and their natural tendency to fear. How did he do this? He encouraged them to be reminded that he was always with them and always would be. I will be with you always until the end of the world. He reminded them of his companionship. In the first reading of Jeremiah, we read, but the Lord is with me like almighty champion. My persecutors will stumble. They will not triumph. And we look at the example of Mary when she was asked to be the mother of Jesus. Basically, she said, I'm not going to do it, but I'm going to let you do it. Let it be done to me. She was frightened, but she didn't give in to fear. The only antidote to incapacitating fear is a good memory that we are unconditional love, that we're always accompanied, that we will never be left behind. Nothing can separate us from this unconditional love. The strong memory is what we need. Remember the times in our lives when we have been mysteriously embraced in times of great trial and fear, and we've made it through. We're called to remind ourselves of our true identity. Who we are the unconditionally loved daughters and sons of God forever. We cannot afford to forget that. This is our relationship. This is who we are. And so as we approach this banquet of love, we're reminded to remember the words of the gospel today that stand out. Do not ever give in to fear.